Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Teas at dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Ernest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $eJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. That's deal with your problems, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for joining in to the Deal to Heal podcast. For those who haven't, if you haven't, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page, also our Facebook page, where we're able to converse with you a little bit more and give you more information on things that we have coming up as far as workshops, seminars, products, whatever that we have going on. Make sure you do that for us. And also go to our podcast page on Spotify, give us a rating, and also follow us there because we can use it. We can use the rating. Let us know how we're doing, good or bad. Either way, I take all suggestions. I don't take it personal. So also make sure you stay until the end. I'm going to tell you guys how you can win $100 from the podcast. All right. But you got to stay to the end to find out. All right. So again, thank you guys for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James. And today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Miss Taccarra. How are you doing?
Hello. I am feeling fantastic today. How are you?
I am good. I'm really good. Really, first of all, let me say thank you for being on. Thank you for taking out the time to be here. You could be doing anything else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and I definitely appreciate it, and I want you to know that up front. So you know what? First question we're going to do. So introduce yourself to my listeners and tell them who you are and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. So thank you for the invite as well. I know you came across one of my rants and that's how we are here today. First and foremost, of course, I'm a woman. I'm just out here trying to enjoy life and everything that it has to offer professionally. 9 to 5, I am a public health nurse with the military. I also have a podcast called A Letter to My Sister. I have a book coming out called A Letter to My Sister. I do group coaching for women, and basically all of this came about because I just got to the point one day where I said, I'm just not happy. I'm not happy with the way that I'm living life right now. And then but today I'm in a completely different situation. And so my goal is to help the frustrated professional woman just live the life that she desires and that is most authentic to her without doing all the people pleasing that sometimes we tend to do.
All right, all right. Okay, so you said a mouthful. So you know what, we gonna jump right in. So I definitely want to talk about the podcast and the coaching a little later.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I was listening to your podcast. I actually got to check it out and listen to a couple episodes. And so I liked what I heard, definitely. So and also congratulations on the podcast.
Thank you.
I think you're in the second or third season.
Yes, I am I in the third? Yes, I'm in the third season. They're going by so fast.
Right, right.
Yes,
Okay,
the third
okay.
season.
Okay, so like you said, I came across one of your video. I think it was a video or a live. I think it was a live you were doing. I came across you were doing a live, and I kind of just listened to it and everything, and I was like, okay, I like it, and so I reached out to you, and just like everybody else, I send them a guest request form, and so when I got to your form, when I was looking at it, and I seen the topics that you want to speak on, I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna have some talking now, right? So one of the things that you put on, you wanted to talk about or address the differences between sexual advice given to young men or young boys and young girls growing up in the church. And so me myself, I'm a PK. I've been in church my whole life, the whole thing. And so I was like, ooh, we about to get it. So so I was really because I'm gonna let you start it, right? Because I don't want to take over because I have my own things with sex in the church, but so
Ooh,
I'll
it's
let
about to
you
be
get started.
juicy then.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, oh, okay, here we go. So the first thing, like I said, you mentioned about the differences in the advice that is given to boys and girls, and then you also mentioned purity culture. So, what are some of the differences that you see in that advice that is given, from boys and girls as far as growing up in the church? And then, first of all, what is your experience with the church? Are you also raised in the church also?
Very much so. I do have a little bit of it. What's the best way that I want to put it? I wasn't forced to go to church. I actually just like to go to church. And interestingly enough about me is that I came from a primarily single parent household. So I stayed with my mom during the school year, stayed with my father, my grandparents, basically the whole family during the summer, because that's where everyone else was. And so my mother, she's not big into church, but I was. And so back in the day, when it was safe, of course, but I used to call like the church man myself to come pick me up so they could take me to church. And so like for me, I have always been into church. And then during the summer, I was basically on everything that there was. I was in the junior choir. I was in the youth ministry. I was a junior usher. So I was everywhere. Whatever position was available, I promise you, I'm sure that I did it in the church for sure.
Okay, cool. I also I wasn't in everything. I was in the choir. I think that's necessary. Just growing up, you in the choir whether you want to be or not. But I also tell the story about my first sermon that I ever did. And so what happened with that? We would have a youth day every once a month. If the youth. So on the youth day, the youth do everything. Usher, from the top to the bottom, including preach. And so the girl who was over the youth department, she was only a couple of years older than us. She probably was like 19, maybe 20 at that time. I know she was like around, late teens. She wasn't too much older than us. And whenever we would have, the youth day, she would always be the speaker. And so this one day, again, she got up to get ready to be the speaker. And the pastor was like, nope, stop. Like every month, we always had the same person. And we have a whole youth department, like, and nobody else, none of the rest of you, speak or whatever. So she was like, so I'm going to pick. And so she picked me. and she picked my cousin. And she was like, y'all got 5 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
And,
wow.
and so he went first. So they gave me 5 minutes to find the scripture real quick. And so it went well, of course, and the rest is history. But I never forgot that. I'm like, oh shoot. You know what I mean? It was like right on the spot. So it was like, all right, let me jump in and do what I need to do. So and so that being said, of course, I grew up in the church. Of course, I said I'm a PK, third or fourth generation preacher, pastor. Think about 5 generations, maybe. I don't know. It's a lot of us. And so I definitely grew up in the church. So again, when we're talking about the differences in advice, just give us an example of one of the differences and that you speak of between the difference and the advice given to young boys and young girls when we talk about sex in the church.
Yeah, I think, of course, one of the main things that is heavily focused more so, and I'll stick with the church, but in the church environment, is the way that we dress as women. And so we want to have this pure appearance, and depending on your subset, it may even be more strict. And so, you want to wear your skirts and your dresses to your knees. You're even in some all the way to your ankles. And typically it's given in a way so that you do not tempt someone else. And then even I remember, like, I got some shapely legs. I got some runner's legs. My grandma used to be like, baby, you got to cover them up. Get my scarf. You about to be up in the pulpit. You need to cover your legs up. And so, like, to me, it was one of those things where as, young boys where you were able to dress, in whatever way that you essentially wanted to. But then as a woman, the assets that you naturally have, everything has to be covered up. Like, you can't really wear something like this in some cases. It's got to go to your knees or to your ankles or something like that. And then if you're not acting accordingly, then you might get the title of fast. You're being fast.
Yeah.
Ain't never heard a boy called fast ever. A male, nothing. Never heard them being called fast. Even if 2 kids were caught being inappropriate, it's typically the young girl is the one who gets the negative, title. So that's one of them or 2 of them, however many I just gave 2 examples.
Yeah. And I grew up definitely in the environment with the young girls wearing the or the ladies in general, at least to the knees, but some to the ankles too. You know what I mean? So, and then I also grew up where the ladies didn't wear pants. So it was always skirts. And then even with us as the men, we did have a dress code too. Several things in my church, right? So we couldn't wear shorts. So we always had to wear full length pants. We couldn't have a beard. So I can have this. You know what I mean? I had to cut my beard off. It had to be clean shaven, nice regular haircut. Couldn't even be bald back then. Like, no, you have to have the standard, not even a fade, just a standard haircut, growing up. And so, so I definitely understand that. But in my upbringing, of course, like I said, we had our things also with the boys and the girls. But one of the other things,
as not to tempt, like for how you had to.
I don't think, not necessarily for the men. For the males, it just was the dress code. Like, that's what it was. For the females, it was the dress code. That was the dress code also, but that was part of the reason why that was the dress code. Because I do remember those conversations being had, like, cover yourself and things like that. So yeah, that's definitely a different thing. But I know one of the other things that taught, even when we start talking about sex in the church, a lot of times the whole situation, when you even bring up sex, it was like, okay, no sex, period. save yourself till marriage. And while I agree with that, in principle, I think that a lot of things, at least with me growing up, and I think it's just in general, from my generation, I'm 45, so from my upbringing 45 years ago, it still was probably kind of the same. Some of the things changed a little bit more now than it was then, but a lot of things that we were taught to do, we were taught to do it without reason, right? It was like, because this is what the rules are, and I think that had we really had the conversations, of why you do some of the things or why you were taught to do some of the things that you did, it would have stopped a lot of people a lot of kids from doing different things, So instead of just saying, save yourself till marriage, but let's talk about, what happens when, you join together in a sexual act with someone, and the emotions and the soul ties and the things that, carry along with that. Because now that it makes sense to me,
Right.
even as a child, it would make sense, save myself, because if I give myself to someone who's not worthy, now I feel some type of way. Or if I give myself to someone who may be misleading me, and now they've got what they came for and they're gone, and how that makes me feel, now that I'm left behind, that would make more sense to me. But we didn't have those conversations. Did you guys have those conversations coming up?
No, no, no. It was keep your legs closed. It was, stay pure. So basically everything that you just said is exactly what was taught. I do believe that as far as church culture goes, we're definitely getting a lot better as far as emphasizing the reasons why, but certainly back then, I'm not too far behind you. I'm 39. So even still, same conversations exactly. And top of that, also it was, don't get pregnant. You don't want to get pregnant and things like that. But then when young ladies did come to the church and they were pregnant, it was so much shame that you could see on the face, or that, they kind of became the talk of the town, and then all of a sudden they would disappear. No one would see them again until after they had the baby. Then once they had the baby, it seemed like everyone was just welcoming them with open arms as if nothing happened. And I was like, that's a gap right there, because the time that, she left clearly was probably the time that she needed the most support, and we kind of dropped her in that aspect.
Yeah, and because that's almost a year, and definitely you already as a woman in a emotional state, just because you're carrying a child, and so that's the least time, like you said, that you want to be left by yourself, and then we also know that the mother's emotional state definitely have an effect on the baby's physical and emotional state when the baby is conceived, so we definitely will want to make sure that at those times that she was receiving the most support than ever, especially in the church, and that's where, again, I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I think that it has to be addressed, and so that hopefully it can change, like you said, we were talking about our generation, but we are the leaders of the next generation. And if we're not having the conversations, then how is it going to change? How are things going to change? And so that's why I say, even with the reasoning behind some of the teachings that we have, just by giving us a reason why we're doing it, now that makes sense. You know what I mean? And so even like, I mentioned about, staying a virgin until you are married. Why? And then definitely we have to even talk more so about, like you said, once you have, let's have had sex, or have, not just had sex, that's one, but a lot of times we can still hide that. You know what I mean? We can still hide it unless you were getting caught in the act or something like that. You can still hide that. But then if you end up pregnant, you can't hide that, because now that evidence is out there. But even having that, or having, had sex and having got pregnant, there has to be more reconciliation and forgiveness, not from God, but from the church itself, to be able to say, okay, you made a mistake, whatever, you already repented, which definitely means repenting uh, to God and everything. So let us help you from here, to go, teach you whatever it was. So like I said, if you're pregnant, that's a whole nother element to it. But even if you don't get pregnant, let's just say now that you have had sex. So okay, now if we're having those teachings of why, now you can really even understand, because now you may have had sex with somebody that you weren't even in a relationship with, or somebody who again was misleading, and now you're in this place that now you can see, okay, this is what they were talking about, but if you weren't having those conversations in the first place, you don't even have nothing to fall back on to say, oh, is this what this what it was talking about? This what it was, and so you know, unless you have another example of something, or want to mention something else, that a difference, because I know we talked about those, but are there any other ones that come to mind?
Specifically the topic of purity itself
Mhm.
and purity culture, because for us, when I was growing up in the church, we had the purity, like the promise rings and all that, but I don't remember seeing my counterparts at, like, I have a purity ring and all the things, and cheering and keep yourself pure, and you want to present yourself to your husband and things like that. But my counterparts were not getting that same, they're not getting a conference. I've never seen a man come up to me and say, yes, I also went to a purity conference, I also have a promise ring. Like, I have not come across it. If you have, I don't know, but I have not.
Well,
And
you know
then
what? So, tell me a little bit about that. Because so in my growing up, we didn't even have the purity culture. So
okay.
that whole notion, we didn't have that on either side. It's for the boys or the girls.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about that, because I personally haven't experienced or know anyone personally who has experienced even going through that culture, or being a part of that.
Okay. So basically, the emphasis, of course, is the same thing that we hear: keep yourself pure, keep your legs closed. You want to present yourself, to your husband. You want to wear white on your wedding day. You don't want to
Mhm.
stain yourself. And I feel like when we give those kinds of messages in the situation that you just gave, if then a woman does have sex and she's grown up in that, you need to be pure, you need to be able to present yourself to your husband. There's so many women that I've come across that now feel less than because they have had sex, and now they feel extremely guilty, and they can't get past that aspect of it, because now they feel like not only have they let down God, they've let down themselves, they let down their family, and it's like they weigh it so heavily, like they haven't even been able to forgive themselves, and then they call themselves names because of how deeply ingrained that is to them. Because we're not teaching forgiveness, we're not teaching the reasons why, we're not teaching um like how, like, as far as sustaining, we're not teaching how to sustain yourself during abstinence. And then even for me, just for my own personal story, even I said, okay, I did not wait until marriage to have sex, but then after that I got convicted into a point where I said, okay, no more sex for me until I get married. And then so, but even that, because I still had all of those old thinking and processes, and I had gone so long without sex, it took me so long to get my brain to flip once I got married to actually say sex is okay. And I feel like
Mm.
that's the message that we're not getting, is that initially young children get sex is bad, no sex, no sex, no sex, no sex. Then you get married and they're like, well, when y'all having kids? Well, you've been telling me all these years that sex was
Right.
bad. Now you want me to be out here doing the things a husband and wife is supposed to do. I'm trying to switch my mindset, because for 20, whatever, however it is, until you decide to get married, you now have to come to the mindset that sex is good. And so we have to say, yes, sex is good, but in the confines of this, or once you do this. And I feel like once we start to do that kind of message, then we can come at this from a more well-rounded view, because I do know sometimes, parents have a difficult time bringing up that conversation, and it's odd, or sometimes parents want to tell you, okay, don't have sex, but they didn't. So then then it's kind of like, well, how you gonna tell me and you didn't? And so I feel like we need to be able to have more open and honest conversations. Personally, this is just me personally, I don't have kids, let me put that disclaimer out there as well. But I feel like we need to start as early as possible, not talking about sex, but sexual things, so that it's not so foreign once the time comes to actually have sex. So, me personally, I suggest that people start having sexual type conversations as early as 4. And people are like, 4? But I'm like, children need to know what is considered appropriate and inappropriate. And so by the time that child is 5, they're out of your sight. They're out of your sight for at least a whole day or half a day. And when they're going to the bathroom and this and that and the other, they need to know what's appropriate and not. And you never know what is happening when these children are not in your sight, especially if you did not tell them. And then I always, say you need to use technical terms. So don't use those cute names, that, oh, did they touch you? This, your tata, your TT, and this and that, or, naming it some other kind of thing. But I'm like, if God forbid something was to happen to your child and you take that person to court and you put your child on the stand and they're using these cute names, that lawyer can easily circumvent whatever they say. They're like, no, they misunderstood. Like if you're giving them a candy name, like your apple or whatever, they're right. Like, no, they misunderstood. I actually offered them an apple. Okay, there's no way. There's no way to rebuttal that. And so I feel that if we start having those conversations with our children early, it's not a strange conversation to have, because this has been progressive their entire life. As they go through puberty, we start talking about that. You may start feeling some urges and some sensations. That's perfectly okay. Like your body does what the body is going to do. And I think if we do that, then it's easier to have those conversations, not just coming out of nowhere, like, hey, you having urges, you having sex, you, and then, it's not so odd after that.
And I agree with you. Even going back to the beginning, like you said, when you first said, 4, I was also kind of like 4, but then like you,
a bit like
right. But when you started talking, it made more sense, because at those early ages, we are teaching them about, stranger danger, or if somebody touch you in a way, that's not appropriate. So again, like you said, if we are having, definitely we need to be having those conversations. But if we're having conversations about what's not appropriate, then yes, we should also be having conversations of what is appropriate. And of course, those conversations will be appropriate for that age group, for a child and as they grow up. But we need to be having those conversations, because again, like you said, once you, after being taught, your whole life, especially if you grew up in church like I did, to, abstain from sex, don't have sex, sex is bad until marriage, whatever. But by the time you get married, there's no other conversation, outside of, okay, now you can do it. Do what? You know what exactly. I mean? And so it's not only need to be taught that is good and is natural within the confines of marriage, as which it was, intended for, but let's have a conversation about what it actually is. Let's have a conversation about, sustaining, not only sustaining, but sustaining and dating. What does that look like? What is the mindset behind it? What can you do, and what sort of things should you be looking for to build a meaningful relationship without sex? Because you want to do that anyway, and so you're not getting caught in these infatuation relationships, especially, which happens a lot I wasn't my experience, but I believe it happens a lot with people that I knew that grew up in the church. You get in these relationships and you get infatuated with each other, but you have, because you don't really have any uh, real guidance on the emotional or the sexual, but not even the emotional part, to be able to differentiate what is love in and what love is and what love is not in a relationship. Because we always hear about, God is love and love is kind, and you want to spit the scriptures. Okay, but what does that mean in reality? What does that mean to me? What does that mean in this relationship that I am in? Because once you get married, again, it's too late, right? And I remember, I don't know if you're familiar with Kev on Stage, the comedian. So I remember listening to him and his wife talking about when they got married, because she grew up in the church. I think they both did to an extent, but she was still a virgin. But even that same thing, that's what happened to her, was trying to get her mind to switch over from, I've been a virgin this whole time, and I've been saving myself this whole time, and I've been, celibate this whole time. Now to switch my mind and say it's okay, even if you say it to yourself, it's okay. But the actual getting yourself to the point where you're comfortable with even doing it after you've been saying it was bad your whole life, that takes a toll on you, And so we need to definitely be having these conversations, because I know from growing up, some of the teachings, when we got to where we were ready to get married, even after, right? So even after you get married, it's like, okay, you can have sex, and that's it. So you're like, well, okay, what? You know what I mean? What are we supposed to be doing here? So if you're not having a conversation at all regarding sex, then even if you teach someone to wait until marriage and they do, then what? What do you do after that? Because you're pretty much setting them up for failure, or could be setting them up for failure, especially if their mate is not a virgin. If their mate is already experienced, because now that mate is coming to the table with some expectations, and some experiences that you may not have, that you may not be ready for, you know what I'm saying? Or that you may not even have been exposed to at this point. And now, you just got married, and it's supposed to be the happiest time, let alone to about the honeymoon. You go on the honeymoon and you but they're ready to swing from the chandeliers, and you're like, wait a minute. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I feel like, my personal opinion, I'm like, if you're going to tell us, if you're going to give us a direct command, like, hey, don't do this, don't do that, then show me how to get there properly. Mm-hmm. Because, and then we tend to take bits and pieces and we don't put them in context either. And then so we say, okay, well, Paul said it's better to marry than, burn from lust. And so we're like, well, just hurry up and get married. Let's just hurry up, because both of us have these feelings and these sensations and these, but we're not saying, okay, but this is the proper way that you need to vet this person that you're with. This is the proper way that you need to do this. And then so we rush into these marriages, and now we're struggling, and then we're just being told, just pray about it. Pray about it. You got it. And then you have these same couples that are going through divorce in secret because they really had nobody to turn to, or they didn't even know who to talk to. And it's like we also become very detached once we're told sex is bad. And so we don't even know what we like. And so a lot of people assume that means that, oh, well, I got to go here. I got to test drive. I got to experiment. I got to do this. And it's not that, but like, what do you like? Like, what do you like against your skin? What feels nice against your skin? What is it that you like to do? What are some of the textures? What are the feels? You can figure some of these things out without you actually being in relationship with someone. And then it's like, if you feel lonely, okay, are you feeling lonely just because you need to be in community? Do you feel lonely because you need to have more quality friendships? Like, what is the reason behind some of these things? And so I feel like if we start asking those type of questions and drilling further down, then we're at least able to make people more armed and more prepared. So truly, if they are going to sustain or abstain. I try to say, because I did learn as of late, there is a difference between celibacy and abstinence. And I was like, oh, thank you. I was not aware, because of course we use them interchangeably. But what I learned from someone else is celibacy is like you're taking the vow, like you're the nun, the monk. That is celibacy. You don't plan on having sex. Abstinence is, well, I'm waiting until a certain endpoint, and then that is where I'm going to have sex. But then also where you brought up with Kev on stage and his wife, I feel like also kind of within the church community, we can wear virginity as a badge of honor because we've done what we were supposed to do. And so I've got this badge of honor that I've had this entire time. Now I get into marriage and I don't have the badge anymore.
Right.
Like it was good, but I don't have it anymore. And then it's like, okay, well, now you need to make another adjustment because you've self-identified this entire time as being a virgin. Some people probably even gave you kudos for that and gave you congratulations because you have saved yourself. And most people have not done this. And it's like, we need to kind of look at it from a different way. Like instead of it being like, yep, I'm a virgin, like just kind of making it very casual. Like for me to say, yeah, I'm a vegetarian, people aren't going to be like, oh, you're a vegetarian? But if I say I'm a virgin, they'd be like, for real? Like, how you doing that? Like, what's going on here? And then people have more questions. And then also for me, when I was a virgin, it was almost like it was a challenge for some people that I did decide to date. And it's like, you need to be aware of that as well. Because no one told me that when you out here doing what you're supposed to do, you might come across some men that see your virginity as a challenge to see if they can talk you out of your conviction.
Yeah, because now they want to take that badge and hang it on their wall for a different reason, you know. And that's exactly what you said, and I agree with you 100%. Because when we talk about the virgin part of it, and the whole thing with that to be when it becomes part of your identity, you know, it's a lot. People use a lot of things that they hold on to that becomes a part of them. One thing with men, a lot of times we associate our work as part of our identity. You know, what do you do? Which is a question that you often ask a man, hey, what do you do for a living? You know, and he's like, okay, I'm this. You know, and that becomes part of our identity. But in the church world, especially when we're talking about virgins, it's rare for men. We do have it. I do know some, you know, that did wait. So you have that, and then you have the women, but it's more so on the women. Again, that's one of those biases, and I think is kind of impressed more on the females than it is on the men, on the males, and then it's more celebrated at the same time. Because like you said, when you get to even if you wait to the wedding till you do get married, generally, especially now, the man's tux is black or whatever color, and then the woman gets to wear white because she was poor or whatever. So even if you waited as a man, you know, for that day, when you get there, you're still not celebrated because you got on a black suit. So you look like you're going to a funeral, and she look like she's going to have it. So it's like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? And so, yes, that whole disconnect, and to then have to try to turn that off, you know, and depending on how much of a part of your story that is, you know, that can be a hard thing. Even when now you're in a position where, hey, now is the time you're supposed to do it. And now is the time that it's okay. Now is the time that, you know, you're supposed to share yourself with this person who you've chosen to spend the rest of your life with. But it's easier said than done, you know, without the teachings of it, without, you know, understanding it and knowing what to expect before you get to that point. You know, that's a whole nother ball game. You know, so I definitely agree with you on that. And, you know, and I think the marriage part of it is really big. We are doing better in the church as a whole with our marriage ministries and even our divorce ministries. You know, I've been to one. Unfortunately, I have been divorced, but I haven't been a part of a divorce ministry. But I definitely think that it's necessary. I think there are some changes that you go through. I think there's some loneliness that you go through. I think there are some separation anxieties that you go through, especially with the women. Sometimes if you were a woman who your husband was the breadwinner, and things like that, especially if you got together young, so maybe he's been the breadwinner your whole adult life, and now you're in this position that now you have to take care of yourself and your own bills and things like that, as well as the kids. If you had kids, I definitely can see how that can be challenging. So I'm glad that as a church society, we are moving forward. Again, I haven't. It's been a long time since I had those conversations. So I'm not sure how they go, but I'm glad that we are moving forward and we are able to have those conversations now. At least some of us on some platforms, but I do think that we probably need to push it a little more so that make it common across the board. Make it common, and I think that just that within itself could change a whole lot, even with our numbers of the divorce in the church. Because that's a whole another ball game. You start talking about divorce, and then you think in the church it should be different. Well, if you ain't taught, you ain't taught. Whether you're in the church or out the church, if you're not taught, going into a marriage, what that looks like, how to operate inside of a marriage, what that looks like, and even on the way out, what that should look like. If you're not taught it, you're not taught it. And so whether you're in the church or outside the church, it's still going to have the same results. So, I'm so glad we had this conversation. I think it's very enlightening, and I'm glad to hear definitely from a woman's point of view, because this is not a conversation. I don't think this is a conversation I've ever had. Definitely have with a woman. So I think that's great. So speaking of conversations, we mentioned at the beginning that you have a podcast. And I also mentioned that I was able to check it out to some of the episodes that you have. So talk to us a little bit about the podcast and how you even came to the point to get involved in this podcast world.
Ooh, that's an excellent question. So my podcast is called A Letter to My Sister, and it is all the things that I wish I had known about self, relationship, money, and careers. Every bit of that, especially a lot about self and relationships for sure. And so for this season, I'm focused solely on relationships, all aspects of relationship, all aspects of marriages. So I'm like, we really need to know the real deal about marriages around here. But I decided to do the podcast, number one, because I was coming out with a book. And they said, okay, well, how about you get some more of these thoughts and ideas out? And interestingly enough, is I'd separated from my husband in like at the end of 2020. And then so at the start of 2021, that was when I was like, okay, I'm gonna get some things in order. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And so the day that my divorce was final is actually the day that I chose to press play for the podcast. And so for me, that was kind of like the end of one thing, and it was the start of another thing. But also in the process of that, I was like, you never really hear a person's perspective when they're going through a divorce until they're like years removed from it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like when they're talking about it, there's no more emotion in there. They make it seem like it's so easy, like, yeah, I just had to do this and I just had to do that and I just had to do that and I was done. And so I had like little segments in between called In the Thick of It, where I was actually processing the emotions and the feelings that I was having about the divorce as I was in it. So like if I felt a certain kind of way, I pressed record. If I felt another kind of way, I pressed record. And so that people can really get a good idea of that, I talked about just phases of when I did have low self-esteem when I was younger and how that affected a lot of the decisions that I made, including the people that I chose to date, questions that I should have been asking, red flags that I saw that I was like, oh, it's fine. It's okay. It's okay. And, just kind of going through that. And so that is basically what the podcast is about. So either I could be your big sister, or I could be your good cousin, or just someone who's had the experience that maybe you just haven't had yet. So I think everyone can get a little bit from it.
Okay. And you mentioned about your book. I know you said it's not. You probably don't have a release date yet, but tell us a little bit about it. So build up a little anticipation. We'll be waiting for it.
Yeah, so this actually called A Letter to My Sister as well. I call it the Big Sister's Guide to Dating and Relationships. And I go into a lot more. I literally put myself out on Front Street. It's really, well, I got all my little business out there. But I talk about the way that I grew up. I talk about the way that I internalize things. I talk about my living with my mom for the school year, my father during the summer, how I initially did not think that that had an effect, because I know that you talk about fatherlessness sometimes in different episodes. And even though my father and I have a very good relationship, a very close relationship, I did not realize I still had some of the remnants of a child who did not have their father around all the time. And so I realized, okay, a lot of these men I dated was actually because they gave me compliments that I wasn't used to hearing very often. So you're pretty, you're beautiful, you're this, you're that. And so I talk about how I got into some of these relationships. I talk about how I got into my marriage, the things that I saw that I did not quite question, that I should have questioned. I break down in each segment because I talk about yourself first, then I talk about dating, then engaged, then married, if you need to walk away, and divorce. And so each part, I have different questions that you really need to ask yourself about, okay, am I actually ready to date? All right, now that I'm dating, am I actually ready to be engaged? Have we had these types of conversations? And I really, really, really emphasize counseling, premarital counseling, regular counseling, all the counseling. But I really emphasize that because, as a church, we always think of premarital counseling and we go to church for the premarital counseling, which I will say I am for. But I also believe that if that person is not equipped, then you need to go to a professional. Honestly, I still say you need to go to a professional. You need to go to a neutral party, because sometimes that person, whoever you're going with, may not be as honest as they need to be, because now they don't want to be judged by this person that they know, or end up hearing their story come across the pulpit. And so that was one of the things that I said, I really wish that not only had we done premarital counseling with the church, but we had done it with a professional, to maybe ask some of those deeper questions, because he did ask us some really good questions, but we didn't go any deeper into it. And now that I see we didn't really go deeper into that, that is really what caused some of our issues as well. Again, sex also being one of those, because it took me so long to click over. And then because I was living with my mom, single parent, I'm Miss Independent, I don't need your help, I don't need this, I don't need that. And so that took me a long time too. And so those are all of the things that I talk about in the book. So this is not meant to be like read through, put it down and done. This is meant to pick it up for each phase that you're in, and then pick it up again, and then pick it up again. And if you do decide that you need to walk away, I have questions that you need to ask yourself. In the divorce question, I only have one, because I'm not an advocate for divorce whatsoever, but I do believe there are situations where, like, if the person is trying to get you to see the Lord quicker than what he told you to, now you're going to have to get up out of there. So, but I have like questions that you need to really ask, because I do believe that some of us, we tend to leave our marriages too quick at the first sign. And if I had gotten divorced when I wanted to, I would have had some regrets, because I wouldn't have felt like that I had done every single thing it is. Did I turn every corner? Did I do my best? Did I really try to resolve everything? Or did I just wash my hands of it and go? But because I stayed, because I know that I flipped and turned everything that I was supposed to, like when I did decide to get the divorce, when I did decide to walk away, like I really felt comfort. I did not feel convicted. I still felt the love of Jesus, because some people struggle with that too. But it's like, when you've done all that, when you've spoken to your Father and he's giving you whatever downloads you need, whatever love you need, whatever comfort you need, whatever confirmations it is that you need, then I feel like that's when you can just truly evolve. And then back to my coaching program, have the life that you want and that you desire.
Whew. Okay. Well, I tell you one thing, it's official. You got to come back with this book. Come back. We got to have this whole divorce conversation because I'll just listen to you like, oh, this is juicy. You know what I'm saying? You got some questions I should have asked myself a couple of times. So
Yeah.
definitely got to have you back. Taccarra, I thank you so much for being on. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, your time with us, and myself and listeners. I want you to leave us. I'll let you have the last word. Leave us with something. I don't know, a word of advice, whatever it is that you want, word of wisdom, whatever that you want to leave us with, and give us your, social media handles and all of that. I'll give you a chance to think about that real quick. To my listeners, I told you guys I was going to tell you how you can win $100, right? So you can win $100 by being a super subscriber, just being one of our super subscribers. What does it mean to be a super subscriber? That means you have subscribed to our YouTube page, our Facebook page, and our Spotify podcast. All three of those, you must subscribe to all three. And then after you subscribe to all three, then you must text the word win to 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. And that's it. That's all you got to do. And it's a random contest and it's ongoing. So random means I can do it at any time. I can do it today and I can do it tomorrow if I wanted to, or whenever. And it never stops. So whenever you win, whoever wins, and you always have another chance to win. So become a super subscriber. Join our super subscriber contest by subscribing to our YouTube page, our Facebook page, and our Spotify podcast. Then text the word win to 866-326-0730. Thank you guys very much. So, Miss Taccarra, I'm going to let you have the last word. So the floor is yours.
The last word. Well, since we were talking about sex, I'm going to keep it there. And that is communicate, communicate, communicate. Don't be afraid to communicate your sexual needs, your desires, whether you're abstaining or whatever. Don't let anyone talk you out of your conviction, if that's what it is that you have. And then also move at your own pace. Don't let anybody speed you up if that's not what you're comfortable with. And as I always say, like, if you are uncomfortable with having the sex conversation with someone that you're dating or in a relationship with, you probably don't need to be having sex. Like, if you can't ask them, when is the last time they've been tested? When is the last time they've been sexually, like, have they gotten tested? And they provide proof now, trust and verify, then get up out of there.
Right. And hey, it's just the world we live in at this time. It's like, hey, you show me the money, like they say. So, Mr. Taccarra, what is your social media handles and where can they find you to follow you and also to sign up for your coaching program?
Yes. So Instagram is where I play at the most. And so I am Taccarra_Renee on Instagram. You can also find me on Facebook as well. And definitely if you're interested in my coaching services, then on Instagram or even on Facebook as well, I do have a link tree and you could just click on that. And I also have like a little freebie because I'm all about journaling and writing your thoughts out so that you can be honest with yourself about the life that you want. And so definitely you can go to my link tree, get a free journal so that we can start working our way towards being authentically and uniquely you.
All right. Again, Taccarra, I definitely appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us tonight. To my listeners, thank you guys for tuning in once again. Make sure you, if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube page, to our Facebook page, and to our Spotify podcast so you don't miss nothing, right? We don't want to miss anything. If you subscribe on YouTube, you get to see my face, right? Put a face to the voice, okay? And also to the face of my guests. If you go to Facebook and join our Facebook page, you also get to see our faces, but you also get information that we're not able to share as freely on YouTube, which includes events that we have coming up, new guests that we may have coming up, products that we have coming up, webinars, seminars, things like that. We are expanding into all of those fields even more. I myself have 3 ebooks that I've written that's coming out and a hardcover book that's coming out. So you guys got to go to a Facebook page, man. You got to go to the Facebook page so you can, be able to communicate with us and keep abreast of all those things that is happening. So once again, thank you guys for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and my mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. So until next time, we will see you guys next week. Be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.